There's two types of people in this world. There are stargazers and there are stool gazers. And the stool gazers fare better. People who look at their poop to get an idea how their body's operating can really gain a lot of insights into steps that might help them improve their health. So in this video, I'm going to help you understand what the color of your stool might be telling you. You know you're going to talk to your friends about this. Let's jump in.
T.C. Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
Digestion is a complicated process, and what we really want to see is we want to see a nice dark brown stool. And if your stool varies in color depending on what you ate, then that's usually a sign that you're really not digesting your food correctly. And what we want to see is we want to see the stomach acidifying the food correctly, and then when that acidified food leaves the stomach, we want to see the gallbladder squirt this alkaline bile down onto that food and neutralize those acids, and that combination of the acidified food and the alkaline bile will create a brown stool. So that's what we really want to see. And when we're seeing varied colors, then something usually is going wrong. So let's first get the really troublesome poops out of the way, and if you're seeing a black stool, that can sometimes indicate that there's some bleeding going on further up the digestive tract. So if that blood actually gets digested and goes through that process, it can turn it black. So we would see a black stool if there was a lot of bleeding further up the intestinal tract. But we can also see a black stool if you're taking some iron supplements, or maybe you took like some Pepto-Bismol. That can turn a stool black when it kind of kills off some bacteria and stuff. But if you're seeing black stool and you can't figure out why, then that can be a sign that there's bleeding going further up the intestinal tract. Now, if you see red in the stool and it looks like blood, that can indicate that maybe you're bleeding further down the line. Maybe you have a hemorrhoid that's bleeding, and maybe there's bleeding like as it's exiting kind of thing. But it usually won't be red if it's bleeding from further up the intestinal tract. It will usually turn black. But neither of those bleeding situations are super optimal, so you're probably going to want to get that checked out. Next, let's go to like an orange stool, and this can often happen if someone's eating something with a lot of beta carotene, like maybe a lot of carrots. And if it turns into a lighter orange color and it kind of goes into that yellow, orangish yellow, and when we're looking at a light colored stool, if it's really yellow, it could be there's a lot of fats that you consumed that really didn't get broken down correctly. When we consume a lot of fats, the gallbladder will squirt this alkaline bile down into the duodenum, so it kind of helps us digest those fats and really emulsify them or break them down. So if they're not getting broken down properly, we could see a really yellow stool. Now if it's just light or a pale color or that lightish orange kind of thing, a lot of times this is that bile is not flowing correctly. The bile is green, and when it mixes with the acidic stuff that leaves the stomach and then it goes to the intestinal tract, and there's bacteria in the large intestine that kind of help us kind of break that down a little bit further, that's what really makes it brown. But when there's not enough bile flowing, then there's nothing there to really color that stool, and it will come out really light or pale colored. So bile not flowing can really be problematic. You really want your bile to flow because that's what helps us really bust the food apart and get all the nutrients out of that food. We need the acid side of digestion working correctly, and we need the alkaline bile side of digestion working correctly. That's what helps us get all those minerals and nutrients and vitamins out of the food that we're consuming. And bile is also used as the main detox pathway for the body. When the liver filters junk and toxins out of the body, it puts it in that bile, and then the bile goes down and gets stored in the gallbladder. And then when it gets called on, because we either ate dietary fat or maybe there's a lot of acidic food leaving the stomach that needs help being neutralized by that alkaline bile, then the bile comes down, and then it comes and it goes through the intestinal tract carrying those toxins with it, and then when we poop like a champion, the toxins go out the back door. So that's the main exit strategy for filth and toxins in the body. And if bile becomes too thick and sticky to flow correctly, then those toxins don't go out the back door and they can get reassimilated, and now the liver's got to filter them out all over again, and the liver can get a little bit overwhelmed and not be able to do all the jobs it's supposed to do. So we really want the bile taking out that trash when it's flowing through the intestinal tract. The thing is, it's really common for someone's bile to become too thick and sticky to flow correctly because there's a lot of things in our life and in our food and in our diet that have the ability to thicken up that bile so it can't flow like it's supposed to. Now, if you see a really white or very light colored stool, that could indicate that the bile duct could be completely blocked. Maybe there's a lot of gallbladder sludge in the gallbladder, or maybe there's a stone blocking a duct and bile is completely restricted and can't come down and color that stool at all. And if that's the case, you might need to learn some new cuss words, because if you have a gallbladder attack, some cussing is going to happen. So study up on some cuss words and know what you're going to say if that happens, because it's not a good time. If you think that might be a problem for you, we'll put a link in the description below this video for our video on understanding gallbladder attacks, so you can check out kind of how that goes about. Now, I'm not saying if your stool is white that you're absolutely going to have a gallbladder attack, but that's something you really want to avoid. So you might want to check in the description below and look at our video on 10 signs of poor bile flow to see if you have other signs that might indicate that there really could be a problem with bile flowing correctly. Now, if your stool is green, there's a variety of things that can make it green. If you're eating a bunch of green leafy vegetables and maybe you're not digesting them quite as well as you should, that can really make the stool green. Maybe you're having like green cupcake frosting. There's a lot of things that could make the stool green, but if you're not really eating those types of things, then let's look at what else can make the stool green. Things like an infection can make it green. If you're dealing with diarrhea and everything's kind of moving through the system a little too quickly, a lot of times it doesn't have time to really be digested correctly to where it would turn that brown color and it'll come out green. Some medications and even antibiotics have the ability to turn some stools green, but keep in mind that that bile is green, and when it meets with that acidic product, it starts to change that color. So if someone isn't making enough stomach acid and they're not acidifying that food correctly, so that bile is not meeting with the acid, it's just mixing with the food and then coming down, that also has the ability to create a green stool. If that were the case, they could check out our video on 10 signs of low stomach acid to see if they might not be producing enough stomach acid, because that's very common. If someone's had their gallbladder removed, bile is not being stored in the gallbladder, but it could still be flowing down that biliary pathway from the liver and just kind of coming into the intestinal tract all the time, just a little bit at a time. And if that's the case, that green bile has the ability to turn that stool a little bit green. So you can see the stool really can give us a lot of indications of what may be going on. And if you feel like you want to dig into this a little bit deeper, chapters 3 and 4 of my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, kind of walks you through figuring out which aspects of digestion might not be working correctly, and if so, what steps do I need to take to correct those. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'm going to put a link in the description below so you can get the whole thing totally for free if you kind of want to walk through that process and see if you can optimize things for yourself. Right now, if you do have a light colored stool, go ahead and jump over and watch our video on 5 ways to improve bile flow, because you really want that bile flowing to help you digest your food correctly and help the body detox. Let us know how it goes.